Good morning. This is going to be a quick config video. It's going to be for the IP services section, and it's going to be the DHCP service. The objective of the lesson is to configure and validate the Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, also known as DHCP. The DHCP protocol is used for clients to acquire an IP address, as well as other options that may fit into the infrastructure needs. DHCP can run on a Cisco iOS router, Linux, or even a Windows server. Where you choose to place the DHCP server is dependent upon your needs and deployment. The prerequisites for this video is to configure the routed interface on router 1, the uplink interface on switch 1, as well as the 3 interfaces that go to the client PCs on switch 1. The IP addressing scheme is going to be 192.168.0.0/24, as noted right here. The default gateway, or the routed interface on router 1, is going to be 192.168.0.1. Okay, that is the summary of what we're going to do, and I will start the configuration now. So the first step would be to configure the LAN interface on the router. I've gone into interface gig Ethernet 00. I've given it a description. IP address is .1 and it's a /24. I've issued a no shutdown because routed interfaces are always down by default out of the box versus switches are always up. So the next step will be to configure the switch. I've had this scripted out, so I've done everything at once, but the order that I did it was the interface facing the router is gig Ethernet 00. I've given it a description, and I've set it as an access port since we are only working with one network in this case. In most cases, you will have this as a trunk, but you'll learn that in a different lesson. The interface that goes to the PC at the bottom left is gig Ethernet 01. I've given it the corresponding descriptions, and I have just incremented that interface up appropriately. So at this point, we've actually completed the prerequisite config, and now we could move on to the actual configuration of the DHCP service. Okay, the first step when configuring DHCP is always to exclude your addresses as best practice. The range or addresses you want to exclude is dependent upon your deployment. It's very common to use the first IP address or the router interface or default gateway. I have created a DHCP pool and named it data. I have set the network, this is the base subnet or the subnet ID, as 192.168.0.0. I have set a DNS server as well as the default router, which DHCP will hand to the client so they know how to IP addresses that are not in their subnet will be sent to the default router. Another thing I'd like to note is the options. So as you can see, there are 254 options you can use. Wireless access points, we'll use options. If you're doing imaging, that will use an option. So depending on your deployment, you're going to need to put different options on there. But for a base network, users, non-imaging things, what we've done is going to be sufficient. So now I'd like to point out that, as you can see, these client PCs, let me log into this one. You can see the network card right here has just changed. I don't know if you saw that when I was hovering my mouse. As you see, this one has an X on it still, and these two have the Ethernet logo, and the third one just changed to the Ethernet logo. I did the IP config before we started this lesson, so as you can see, the Ethernet 0 adapter does not have an IP address on any of these. However, if we refresh it, we could see that this PC picked up the first available address in the DHCP pool. This one picked up the second available, and this one picked up the third. So at this point, the configuration is complete. Some verification commands that you could do on the router would be show IP DHCP binding. Let me make this bigger. And this shows you all the IP addresses that the DHCP service has handed out on the router. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, please let me know.